Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to introduce the next speaker. So the next speaker will actually be Sebastian, who you saw in the panel and earlier on during this conversation as well. He's actually going to be talking a bit about how you can exchange constructs between CDK, CDK Terraform, and CDKs, right? Or CDKs, or however we want to pronounce that. Yeah, so I suggest we switch over to that and listen to what Sebastian has to share.
All right, let's talk about mix and match CDK constructs. I'm Sebastian Korfmann, and I'm the core maintainer to the Terraform CDK. You can find me on Twitter under @Korfmann. Yeah, let's dive into the CDK ecosystem, which consists of AWS CDK, Terraform CDK, and CDKs. And they have all one thing in common. They're built on the JSII and constructs packages. But they all have different implementations when it comes to the applications and the stacks and the actual abstractions, if there are any. And today I want to talk about using constructs from one CDK with the other one. So like sharing abstractions across the different implementations, basically. And by constructs, it's like one thing important to remember is level one, or like the different levels were introduced and coined by the AWS CDK itself. So level one equals to the generated layer. Level two are like abstractions based on those generated constructs, and provides intent-driven APIs. Like easier to use classes and objects, basically. And where level three really equals to like patterns and broader usages, such as a load balance target service, for example. And while the AWS CDK has all these abstractions, CDKs has a few abstractions, I believe, CDKs plus. And the Terraform CDK at the moment doesn't really provide any out of the box, but of course, you're free to build your own, and I think there are like a few community-driven approaches perhaps, but out of the box, we don't provide any at the moment. And yeah, we would love to leverage what the AWS CDK has built in the Terraform CDK as well. But long term, it could also be like the other way around. It would be quite interesting. And the general problem here is that each of those products are like individual implementations, and they're not really compatible, and they all synthesize down to different configurations. Like the CloudFormation spec, or the Terraform spec, or the CDK's manifest spec. Yeah, and how to tackle this? Let's start with the interop between CDKs and other products. And I don't necessarily only mean like CDKs, but in general, like all of them, like like whatever you have, basically. And I think it's like an easier story in this case, since it's more natural to have it like sequentially applied. So you provision whatever infrastructure you have. It might be in AWS, it might be in Google, in Azure, it doesn't really matter. And then CDKs comes into the play, and you just synthesize your stack and apply it to the configuration which you have. I think this fits probably most of the use cases at the moment. But perhaps there's even an integration story between CDKs and Terraform CDK. So there is a Kubernetes provider, and you can actually deploy manifest with that Terraform provider. And so I could imagine something where you have like a Kubernetes provider, driven by CDKs, and you leverage infrastructure that you provision with the AWS provider for Terraform, something like this. This might be interesting, but I haven't really deeply thought about this yet. What I've been thinking more about is the interop between AWS CDK and Terraform CDK itself, since I'm naturally interested in this. And the specific problem here is really that CloudFormation and the Terraform AWS provider syntax are different, right? So it's like different configuration, different formats, even though in the end they are provisioning the same resources. So how can we tackle this? The current options are already existing, basically. So not really very integrated, but you could totally go ahead and use the AWS CloudFormation stack resource in a Terraform setting. and apply whatever you synthesize via your AWS CDK stack, for example. So it's not really a great experience probably, but it would probably work. And vice versa, there is like an open source project which provides custom resources for Terraform providers. I haven't really tried it out yet, but it looks sort of interesting. I'm not sure how stable and how serious this is, but that's at least something which could work in theory if one was, really serious about trying it out. But again, that's not really something which we are after. I've been talking to Elad, one of the core maintainers of the AWS CDK team, and he actually had a great idea, and he came up with a prototype, which I would like to show. And it's like a Terraform stack. So like in the Terraform CDK and Terraform stack, which is using a native AWS CDK resource, and the AWS S3 resource in this case, which comes from the Mono CDK experiment package, which is essentially like a pre-release for the anticipated way of distributing packages for the AWS CDK in version 2. So like, everything in the S1 package. And not really important in this case, just important to remember, it's a native CloudFormation resource. And we actually just provision this inside the Terraform stack. And not as you might expect through a CloudFormation stack resource in the Terraform provider, but actually as a native resource. So when we do a CDKTF diff, we do have native Terraform resources which were provisioned by the stack which you just saw. And that's quite awesome. So how does it work? It's a manual mapping layer at the moment. And I said it's a prototype, so I believe it's pretty much exactly this example which works, and all the other resources aren't working yet. And so the idea is that on level 1 layer, so this generated layer which you talked about for CloudFormation and Terraform, on this layer we have a mapping where we map attributes to the other system, like from CloudFormation to Terraform and vice versa. While this could probably be done, like in some way, to some extent, automatically, I believe there's still like lots of manual work involved. And that's actually the catch. So it's like when we just saw like 2 or 3 resources which were sort of working, there are like a bunch of resources, more than 750 resources which aren't working yet. And that's where community comes into play, and that's what I like to pitch today. So if you're looking for help, if you're interested in contributing into this, there's a project, just follow this link and it will take you to the project. We're also around in the Slack, so just talk to us there if you're interested in that sort of thing. And the real gain is not only for the CDK ecosystem, but in the end, it would be like a native CloudFormation to Terraform and vice versa generator. So you could take any CloudFormation stack and transform it into Terraform. And at the same time, it could take any Terraform AWS configuration and build a CloudFormation stack out of this. So this would be quite cool, I think. And yeah, again, if you would like to help there, you're looking forward to see you around. And yeah, thanks for having me. And
all right, excellent.
Yeah, very cool. The idea of being able to create, like one set of definitions and be able to use them with whatever you want. I think that's a really great idea. I can't wait to see where that goes in the future.
Yep, I agree. Very compelling stuff. So we're going to move on here.